Rick Ector from Rick's Firearm Academy of Detroit. Rick, good evening to you, sir.
Hey, good evening, Cam. How are you doing this evening?
I am okay, man. I really appreciate you coming on the program tonight.
Hey, it's always a pleasure, and like you, I wouldn't let my chance of winning $600 million keep me from being on the show.
Well, listen, I appreciate that. You'd probably still teach folks how to shoot, right?
I definitely do. I've been doing it for approximately 7 years now, man, and it's a joy. As a matter of fact, earlier this very day, I was working with 7 different students, all of them first-time shooters who have expressed an interest in applying for our state's version of a concealed carry license, a concealed pistol license here in Michigan.
Well, and I got to guess that the recent armed citizen story out of Detroit probably has a lot of folks thinking about self-protection. Willie White, 75 years old, at home with his wife who has suffered some significant health problems. 3 guys try to break into his home. Willie White defends himself and his wife with his rifle. Wayne County Prosecutor Kim Worthy said today, quote, although every death is a tragic circumstance, in this case, Mr. White discovered an armed intruder had forced his way into his home in the middle of the night. He had the right to use deadly force to defend himself under these facts because he had an honest and reasonable belief that he was in danger of imminent death or great bodily harm at the time. Is this story resonating in Detroit, Michigan, Rick?
It's getting a lot of publicity, obviously for a variety of reasons. For one, it just shows the brazenness that certain members of our community have, where they feel that just because they're senior citizens in the community that they can just barge into someone's home at 1 o'clock in the morning to victimize them. The other thing that has it resonating in the community is that there are citizens who are willing to defend themselves. And in this case, man, there's a couple of things that jumped out at me. You know, the victim, Mr. White, he had his rifle, and he only put 1 round in his rifle. God bless him. And he obviously, was good enough to make contact and defend his home. But in one version of the story, I saw where he said that he had never fired a firearm before. So I thought those were 2 very, incredible facts that were revealed in this particular story. But the word, I feel, is getting out that citizens, particularly seniors, are taking on a more active role in protecting themselves, and they're willing to fight back. And this was, for me, this was definitely not only the deal of the day, but for me, man, this was the deal of the week.
Well, I got to agree with you, Rick. I mean, every night we try to find an armed citizen story, but there was something about this story. Here's a guy, 75 years old, like you said. Stories that I saw indicated he had bought this rifle several years ago. No indication that he had, ever gone out and actually, gone shooting. But yet, I know he's awfully glad that he had that rifle there to protect himself and his wife. And again, we hear from the opponents of self-defense and the opponents of gun ownership all the time that you'd be better off just picking up the phone and dialing 911.
Cam,
yeah.
Wow. Maybe, even in the best of communities, where you got maybe a responsive police fire system set up where they can get there in 5-10 minutes, man, you got 3 armed intruders literally kicked in your door and are there in your home. That's a lifetime. But when you compare it to what we actually have here, man, 5-10 minutes, 24 minutes is what the number that they're quoting here in terms of an average response for a high priority call.
Right, priority 1, yeah.
So, for the anti-gun people that say that we should just call 911 and wait for the police, man, that's way too late. That's a lifetime.
Well, I mean, when you can make a call to 911 and you can make a call to your local pizza place and the pizza's going to get there before the police are, it is a sign, Rick, that bit of advice about, not needing to be able to protect yourself. Just pick up the phone and call police. That's what they're there for. That's advice that frankly, could have gotten Willie White and his wife killed.
And you know what? I am so glad that they had a gun in the home. I'm so glad that he knew how to use it. I am so glad that he successfully defended himself. You know, I'm not gloating that the bad guy was killed, but I'm not going to shed any tears about it either.
Well, I imagine that, there are a lot of Detroit residents who feel that way at this point. I mean, you've got a city that has substantial problems, including, public safety issues. I think people are, Rick, I got to imagine people are fed up. I've got to think that there is an attitude among a lot of Detroiters, and I don't care if they're liberal or conservative, that, it's sort of a to hell with the criminals kind of attitude. We, the law-abiding, are going to protect ourselves against those who would do us harm.
And you know what? It's a great thing for me to see, because regardless of your individual politics, regardless of where you stand, you realize that you have an inherent right to self-defense. And if you can't, we talk a lot about defending ourselves anywhere, man, but if you can't defend yourself in your own home, then we got a real serious problem. And I must say that I'm glad with some of the laws that we do have in Michigan, the Castle Doctrine and Stand Your Ground, which seems to have been the subject of scrutiny in the national media these days. But you know what? They're a great, effective tool for us to have for the law-abiding citizens to protect themselves.
Talking with Rick Ector from Rick's Firearm Academy of Detroit. And, Rick, given the fact, I mean, I think it's sad, but I don't see Detroit's budgetary issues being resolved anytime soon. In fact, I think it's probably going to get worse. I know that the plan for the state to, in essence, kind of take over the finances of Detroit, that's coming up. Is that next week or week after next? It's coming up pretty soon, right?
It's coming up very soon. There has been talk that they're very close. That is, the state of Michigan, in talks with our local leadership here, the mayor's office and city council, that they're going to reach some type of an agreement with some type of $137 million loan with, it's going to need to be repaid, and some type of oversight or involvement by the state to oversee, us restructure some long-term debt issues that we have. We have a lot of legacy costs in terms of retirees and work rules and all this other stuff that they need to get resolved. But, if people are thinking that, that we're going to come out of this thing with more public safety officers, they're sorely mistaken.
Yeah.
We basically have what we have, and we're lucky if we can hang on to what resources we do have currently. And if you're really serious, like I see a lot of people are, a lot of stories that I'm hearing, and it's not just, the story we're talking about here with Mr. Willie Joe White, but there's been several other stories this week in the city of Detroit. And I am encouraged that folks are fighting back and that we're not going to quit, and that we are prepared to do what's necessary to protect our homes and our families.
Well, Rick, I hope that more people will consider, if they have not before, I hope that they will have that conversation with their spouse or themselves as to whether or not they want to be able to protect themselves. God forbid, if an incident like what happened to Mr. White happens to them, are they going to pick up the phone? Are they going to wait 30 minutes or less for the police to arrive, or will they give themselves a fighting chance to defend themselves within their own home? Well, I'm just curious. I mean, are you seeing a backlog right now in terms of people who are interested in getting their concealed carry license?
People are really, are really actively seeking me out personally, and I'm happy to be there for them. I have a lot of different presences on the internet, and I do some things in the community. One of the very first things I ended up doing just recently, I taught the very first CPL concealed pistol license class that I've taught. I actually taught it in a church. The pastor of the church is an individual that I was brought into contact with, and he just happens to be a 15-year veteran of the local police department here, and he thought it'd be a great idea to turn his parish, onto the idea of law-abiding citizens carrying guns, man. And I taught the class, at least the educational part of it, in a church with permission, of course. And it was very well received. And some of those students that I was talking to you about earlier, that I was actually training at the gun range. We were going through and getting the shooting portion of the class done today.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell you, one of the most rewarding things I get out of it, man, is there was this one lady. She's the spouse of the guy who was in the class, and she really did not want to be at the gun range. And this whole idea of even just touching a gun was so, foreign and even repulsive, man. But I was able to coax her into trying it. And believe it or not, man, she actually loves to shoot now. And
Really?
It's those experiences that I get like that, man, that really, justify what I do, man, and make me glad that I'm here to be able to provide, this service that I do for people, man. It was very rewarding for me personally.
That's very cool. And I got to say, I love the fact that the pastor, a former member of a law enforcement office, actually invited you out there to the church to put on this course. That's fantastic, Rick.
And I'm looking to do more of that with other churches in the community. I think that if we can find pastors who are, pro self-protection, personal protection, I think it'd be a great way to really get at those people who are really deep in the community that aren't really, connected online. So it's something I'm really looking to explore in the future, and hopefully I can do more of.
That's fantastic. Well, listen, Rick, appreciate you coming on the program, sir. Have a great weekend. I know it's going to be a busy one for you, but look forward to doing this again soon.
Man, I'm looking to have a great busy week, and then when April rolls around, man, I hope to see you and the rest of the guys in person in St. Louis.
2 weeks.
Mr. Price, Mr. Pop, and Mr. Gray.
2 weeks from today. That's
Yes,
when
sir.
the NRA annual meeting kicks off. You'll be down there?
I will be in St. Louis, sir.
I'm glad to hear that. All right, Rick, we'll see you in a couple weeks then.
All right, see you in a couple of weeks, and thanks for having me on tonight.